Hi there, my name is Morphsuit America. Title and thumbnail should hint at what this video is gonna talk about. Fixing Assistant in Affix Simulator. Before you go any further, I would say this. If you are new to affixing, I would stress over Affix Simulator and using my Affixing 101 playlist so you start to understand all these various mechanic rules, basics of augmenting affixing. Why am I going to stress this over Affix Assistant? It's because of what you would need to know and just simulating the stuff that you get to do in game. Even though Affixing Assistant can definitely, dumb down a lot of things, allow you to automate a bunch of things, allow you to automate a bunch of your formulas, Assistant will automatically do that. When you play the game, when you go and try to augment and affix, it does not list all those easy approaches. You would need to physically have some of the stuff on you and then allow those options to pop up. Simulator will literally simulate that. I already have some short videos talking about how to use Affixing Assistant and Simulator. I will most likely do a redo talking about the Assistant. You can find those videos in the description. But I would stress the use of using my Affixing 101 playlist and then using the simulator alongside it. Don't get me wrong, Assistant is definitely a good handy tool. Another thing you could use while toying around with the simulator and using my Affixing 101 playlist is use the Assistant's book over here. The Affixing formula sheet, the third option over here. Why? Because this breaks it down even further. This shows you all of the possible ways to try to go for certain abilities. The first one is up here to how to make it. You would need to have power 4s. You would most likely want to have a power 5 already and then use a receptor of some sort. There are various ways to do it. So this will give you that breakdown. Some of the stuff that I already did doesn't show you all of the ways to get the power 5. I talk about the basics, like using power 4s and trying to build up to a power 5. Not only that, you could also look down here in this half where it's like used to make. You would understand that these abilities can be made to make like a power 6 or you stay at a power 5. It depends on how you view it. But use these things to your advantage so you can further understand augments and affixes, because if you don't, you might lose a bunch of resources or it may hurt you in your plans and you may need to rethink everything and you gotta reformulate something again. Don't want you to do that. You want to make sure that everything is right the first time around so you don't need to backtrack and waste a bit of time or waste a good chunk of resources. So, to stress this out, just to dumb it down, if you are new to affixing and augmenting, use that playlist, use that book over here, and then use the simulator to try to get into it. You want to build up on that experience and build up on that knowledge. Toy around in the game as well. Do some simple augments and affixes that's not going to cost you as much. So you can get, okay, so this is actually true. This is how I want to do it. So if I was going for like a might for, let's say I'm going to need a bunch of might 3s to get a might 4. So how am I going to do it? So I'm going to do something like this. Have 2 might 3s. I can try to go for it. Have 3 might 3s. It's going to be a better percent. What's another way to go for a might 4 or power 4? I see a bunch of abilities over here. I might want to try to get these abilities and try to push it to that power 4 ability. So use whatever you see to your advantage. Now let me go further into the simulator assistant. Once again, if you're new to the game, use assistant. Use simulator. Use simulator if you're new to the game. For assistance, intermediate, and further, you will want to understand all these things. The formula that I'm going to use is the GRAC one. Now, here's the thing about the simulator and assistant as well. Simulator has a Japanese version of it and a global NA side. Assistant does not have a global name for it or a global version of it. So if I wanted to try to change the language so it can show Veteran Resolve 5, for example, there's no possible way to do that. You got this icon over here, but it doesn't really do much other than change the thing into Japanese names, and then this one changed the color. There's a report bug icon. This goes to your affix go. This shares the link of your certain formula. This also allows you to go to Affix Simulator this shows the the abilities you could try to go for. This shows you the materials you need. So if I go over here and say Guardian Soul. Actually, I don't know how this button works. Most likely it's gonna... What is it gonna talk about? Actually, let's go over here and see how that works. So yeah, it's gonna list all the possible stuff that you need to go for that thing. So to go for a Guardian Soul, Returner 5, Absolute Glare, Crack 5, you're gonna need all these things here. But that doesn't change the name, does it? So if I go back over here and type in Returner 5, but that's Returner 5. Returner 5 is pretty much Global's Veteran Resolve 5. And if I try to type that in, you don't see that option. So for Assistant, you do need to know the Japanese translated names compared to the simulator, where you can stick with the names that are already present in the global PSO2. But yes, another thing is, with differences, the simulator cannot just pull up your ideal endgame formula. So this Guardian Soul, Veteran Resolve 5, Crack 5, Absolute Glare, you have to know what makes that up, which is why you might want to use this or use my guides, my videos that breaks it down. So that shows how you can get these things, but you got to physically put it in as well. So you would need to open up a panel, then you got to physically move stuff around. And if you're not aware of certain things with the simulator, let's say I do something like this, you can see that the abilities aren't popping up, even though I'm putting a bunch of stuff over here. Let's go with shoot instead. It's not popping up because I'm not following a basic rule. This is why, once again, you want to watch the Affixing 101 playlist so you understand, oh wait, I need to have an X amount of things at certain things for it to work. Assistant kind of cuts around that because it just automates it for you. So if I go over here and let us make that Guardian Soul thing that I talked about, the Grack ability. Guardian Soul, Returner 5, Absolute Glare, and Crack 5. So the method that I did for my simulator one is using a Guardian Soul that is finalized and then using a Soul Receptor for that. Yes, you can do that. So I have something like this. Now, I'm going to talk about that blue button later on, but let's say I try to do this. Now, this is going to show all the possible ways to make these certain abilities. It's going to show you all the possible ways to make the Return 5, the Crack 5, the Guardian Soul, and the Absolute Glare. Absolute Glare only has one way right now, which is pretty much you having 4 Glare Catalysts, a Photonic Glare, and then that's how you make Absolute Glare. The other two, once again, Guardian Soul, you make it physically by combining Astral Soul, Artifact, and Mana Rev in an Absolute Glare, or Soul Receptor with a Guardian Soul. Returners, you got the grade, you need 3 grade 4s to try to make that grade 5, or 2 and or 3 abilities, or well, grade 5 abilities to get that Returner 5 as well. And then same can be said with Crack. So let's go with something like this. You're pretty much imitating what I did over here. Now when I hit that, well, before I hit that, make sure that you also tick the things that you want to tick over here. If I want to use all 6 fodder pieces, I could check that, or I don't check that. I'm just going to check it, leave it as it is. If I want to do it by upsliding, I could check this, but in all honesty, you may not want to do that. Just depends on what you currently have. If you have a bunch of 3 slots, you want to actually upslide to a 4th slot, then you might want to do that. If you have a bunch of 4 slots and you're not upsliding, you don't want that ticked. Depends on what you have in your approach. So if I do something like this, it looks alright. I can tell you that right now. Here's the thing though. What will happen if you have something like this? Now, it might be very rare for it to put a lot of abilities onto a receptor. I think there was only one time I saw that happen. I was like, oh yeah, no, this is not possible. Or I think I was staring at a good chunk of people who showed me their automated formula stuff, and I saw that there was stuff with the Soul Receptor. No, the big thing is you want to avoid this, because you need to understand the rules with receptors. Now, I do have a 101 video talking about it, but the big thing is they're a natural drop. Specifically, the Soul Receptor one, currently, right now, they are a natural drop. Now, there is an SAF weapon that can give a Soul Receptor, but since we are stressing unit pieces in particular, that is not possible. Soul Receptor with a glare catalyst and a crack 4. That is gonna be a pain in the butt to try to go for. And it is technically, as of this recording, impossible to do. Because there is no SAF unit piece that can give a Soul Receptor, there's no add support item that can give a Soul Receptor, and there's no ability that allows you to transfer that Soul Receptor naturally. So if you didn't know much about augments and affixes and the system decides to do something like this, then when you hit confirm and when you try to break it down and stuff, it's going to allow you to actually process this. So if I hit affix it, it's going to do this. And then I'm going to hit yes, yes, and then I hit confirm, and then I wouldn't know any better and I just hit confirm. Once again, there's a problem with this. There's no unit piece for it. Weapon, yes. Unit, no. Now, what is it? There is a piece that can have a Soul Receptor over on the global side and even on Japanese side. Yes, you can have a unit piece that has a Soul Receptor on it, but that's not going to allow you to try to combine everything into a Soul Receptor, Glare Catalyst, and a Crack 4. Try to transfer that Soul Receptor, even if one of the basic rules I talked about is like 3 is a charm, 3 times the abilities allow you to transfer it. Even though you have 3 Soul Receptors, that's not going to work. It's not going to kick in. And that's going to, once again, lead you into this sort of predicament where it's like, oh, I messed up. Or, oh, this isn't really a thing. Now I got to rework this. And now you got to move some of the pieces that you already made onto something else. Now, I don't think it's going to be that bad. Especially if you are going to be trying to make, a Glare Catalyst with a Crack 4. But yeah, you had to pick up on these things and you gotta have to rework it, especially if you're not familiar with it. So you gotta be careful if you automate this. You need to be conscious of these abilities and how they actually work, and if there is such a thing in the game. So yes, there is a Soul Receptor by itself as a unit piece. You can buy it from the metal shop. But is there a way to combine a Soul Receptor with a Glare Catalyst and a Crack 4? No. As of this recording, no. So you have something like that. So the big thing as well is that the simulator doesn't really have a very good way to display everything and what links to what. You would need to actually make another panel and then rename this panel, let's say Guardian Soul Piece, and then it's going to change that name. I'm surprised that it actually changed said name. If I go over here and if I want to, let's say, break it down even further, the problem with simulator is that, let's say I want to try to break down this base piece, I would need to physically do that process. I would need to, once again, figure out what makes these certain pieces, put them in the fodder pieces over here, and then see those options. Affixing Assistant allows you to actually break it down just by clicking on the button. So if I go to, most of these pieces already broken down, but let's say I want to try to fix this, it's not going to be a thing actually. So let's just go back to this thing over here. I click on the lowest options, make sure it's not upslot by... Let's make sure that the affix by upsliding is not ticked in, and then check these pieces. I hit confirm, and then it's going to do that. And you can see that it shows you a lot of boxes, which then you can further break down all the various things, and then goes into further boxes. So you can see all the work that you need to do it. And once again, there's that second button over here that shows you all the fodder pieces you will need to go for that certain formula that you are doing. So yes, this is another plus side to the Affixing Assistant versus the simulator. But once again, simulator is very good for those who are trying to get into it and just get used to the manual system and you doing it. With Affixing Assistant, it kind of dumbs down everything for you, and it's like some things can be left as it is, some things you do need to be conscious of. It depends on your knowledge and your experience. I'm starting to use this a lot more just because, one, like I don't want to physically move stuff again, but if I'm very serious about some things, I'll use both. I will use both to double check my work. It's like math, which is something I'm going to bring up a lot too. Because here's the thing, if you're going to do a math problem, you need to make sure that you understand. Sometimes there are some exceptions where it's like, okay, I can't really, prove this Exactly. Especially in statistics, there's a lot of ways you can get away with. There's a lot of things you can prove and lie about and half-ass and bullshit your way with statistics. But with basic math stuff like 2 plus 2, you can show said work, or like some other things as well. Math problems, of course, as well. But the thing is, you can double check your work and you could prove it as well on paper. And a lot of my teachers back then stressed that because they wanted to see the proof and the work, and that's what you do. So I use the simulator and the assistant for that, even though assistant can easily break it down. If I'm super serious with my certain formula, I'm going to use the simulator as well to double check my work. Which is what I did for that last unit piece, which is the Guardian Soul, Ether Factor, Returner 5, Absolute Glue, and the Crack 5. But yeah, you can do all of this. Now, the big reason to why I personally use the Affixing Assistant is because of these blue boxes. You might be wondering, what the heck is this, Morph? Well, this is going to go into a different video, and that covers a lot of things with the SAT method, the Special Augmentability Transfer. And there's going to be another video talking about that again. I'm not entirely done with it, because I realized in my 1-hour course video, I just explained the bare minimal stuff. I didn't really dive into certain approaches and things that you can use to your advantage. But yeah, so let me talk about this thing. Now, compared to this formula where it's just a forethought, I'm going to go for that endgame ideal formula. So for this one, and once again, it is explained in my Crack video, the Guardian Soul Absolute Glare Veteran Resolve and Crack 5 video. You can see that in the description as well. But in this one, it's Guardian Soul Returner 5, Absolute Glare, Crack 5, Mark Angra, Ether Factor, Mana Rev, and an S7 attack up 2. This thing is giving a whopping 345 attack, 27 PP, HP 210, Dex 210, SRT 220, and if I added time ability on top of that, that reached to fucking 400. So, or above 400. So how exactly will you go about this? Now, if you try to affix this, I'm gonna say this, it's gonna be a living fucking nightmare. It's gonna be hell on earth, because you're not gonna have a lot of the pieces you need to try to actually do this. You could try to, but it boils down to several things that's gonna kick in. One, using add ability items, but if you do that, then it's gonna be demanding a lot more things. So if I go for all these various options over here, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a lot of abilities, and here's another problem. Like, is there an 8th slot factor receptor? Yeah, no. Once again, you will be able to pick that up if you know a good chunk of your augments and abilities, and you worked with a good chunk of augments abilities. So making it normally is going to be a nightmare. What you would want to do is transplant this, because this will make it very manageable. In that video, that 201 or whatever number I decide to label it as, that particular video breaks it down tremendously. So what I'm going to do is do all these things over here. If you want that explanation, it is in that course video as well of how I'm doing this. But once I get it to here, this is pretty much that 4 slot over here, and then you slowly build it to an 8 slot. But this is why I use the Affixing Assistant a lot more than Simulator. It's because of that SAT method. And pretty much that's it. So once again, my thoughts about this, they're both useful. Use them to your advantage. It's just that if you're new to augmenting affixing, use the simulator first, and then build your way up to the assistant, and then use both hand in hand, or use them every now and then. But that's the pros and cons to them as well. So if you have any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.